Hello, good morning, everyone. So I don't really have an idea who is in the room. So it's a pity not being able to see your faces, but it's much better than yesterday, because yesterday I was locked out and missed my panel. Life is full of surprises. I'm not going to repeat what I wanted to say yesterday, but I would like to congratulate the organizers for their brave and consistent approach, their belief in the Turkish market, and also to all of you, all participants and speakers, our community that makes things happen. When I look back the last decade, it was pretty challenging, pretty interesting, but at the same time pretty rewarding for those who all believe in the Turkish PPP, project finance, infrastructure finance domain. Yes, yesterday we heard that there are already some maybe headaches or some concerns. The country risk outlook, plus the FX and the rates not being stabilized. These are short-term concerns, of course. But when we look to the fundamentals of the country, of the region, of the need of the infrastructure, and the ever-increasing the needs and requirements, not only from the domestic market, but also the geography Turkey is positioned, that there will be a pretty bright, dynamic market waiting for us. It has always been a big debate in the Turkish infrastructure, whether it's bankable or not. And we have witnessed some period where some banks, international banks, they were pretty much away from the market. But we have also seen some examples in the PPP domain, for example. We have seen great appetite from the international financials. In terms of sponsors, Turkey has never been short of sponsors. The equity upside is always tremendous. But when it comes to financing, I think we are all concerned about the potential difficulties. I think we're going to start the day with the first panel about what's stopping us, what's the barriers on going forward. Turkey really needs those infrastructure. And funny enough, the availability of funding in the world nowadays, because of COVID, the way we all stuck for the last few months, there's a immense amount of money looking for good opportunities to invest or to finance. So it's amazing. There's such a so many resources waiting to find the exact potential, and the needs accumulating in the country and in the region. I should say region, because there are also the pipeline projects, airports and everything. So the marinas and everything. So at the end of the day, all we need is to match and to understand what's the barrier in between. So again, thank you for all participants and speakers yesterday. I extend my gratitude to the organizers and speakers and participants for today. And I'm so happy to see that the good old tradition continues. And in one shape or another, we continue to keep our community alive. I think without further ado, I will invite our panelists on screen, no stage. And I'll be curious listening to them. Because of some, I think, technical issues and everything, I will leave the floor to Fatih Bey and leave the stage so that the panel can come together and continue as planned. So thank you very much, and looking forward to keeping in touch. Thank you. I leave Emine.
Okay, thank you for your contribution, Rıfat Bey. Hello everyone, and good morning and good afternoon for Turkey, of course, noon in Turkey. I'm going to speak about PPP projects in Turkey regarding waste management sector, and including driving forces, some problems and solutions. When we look at the sectoral distribution investment needs in analyzed globally, 2017 to 2040, of course, electricity and highways emerge as two important sectors to make up more than 2/3 of investment, according to Oxford Economic Reports. And if you look at the world, of course, energy and also highways emerged the first investment sectors. Of course, in Turkey, similar. If you look at the 1980 to 2018, total 242 projects, PPP projects were implemented, and 200 of them in operation. The other than is financially closed and under construction. Of course, among these projects, energy production facilities is number 91 takes the first place, and the highways, services, and ports, health facilities, airports, and follows. However, there is not any waste management project in that period. The PPP model in Turkey was reverted to concession model in Turkey, and also 2886 government procurement law as a revenue generating, is known in Turkey, applied in waste management sector. A concession agreement is signed by authorizing the company for the collection, transportation, and disposal of waste. I think one example is the Çanakkale Solid Waste Management Association, with 5 municipalities started with this kind of project, and association pays the company a price per ton and gives a certain share of revenue the company generates from the waste. Of course, there are many projects. According to 2886 model, almost all of them have been about sharing the income from energy obtained from landfill gas for 30 years. The firm makes all the investment and operations, and the municipalities provide only land. Of course, in Turkey, there's an incentive for energy for 10 years, and this incentive is almost 3 times higher than market electricity prices, and ministry provides extra support in case of using domestic equipment. The energy supplied by the Ministry of continuity of these incentives and waste production is the gate in front of the long-term investment for private sector. In Turkey, the number of facilities that produce energy from biomass 125, and total power generation is 760 megawatts. Another issue that attracts the attention of investors in the waste sector is the waste-related targets set by the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization. With the regulation, amending the regulation on the landfill of waste, published in 2019, a target was set for the recovery of at least 60% of the amount of municipal solid waste collected in 2035. Currently in Turkey, 31 million tons solid waste produced. Only 11% is amount recovered, recycled. The requirement to increase this ratio to 60% in 2035 also paves the way for serious cooperation between the private sector and municipalities. Comprehensive planning has been made, including increasing the efficiency of separate collection, bringing resource efficiency to forefront, and developing emission reduction actions for target. However, 2886 government procurement law model does not produce a holistic solution to waste management. It only focuses on income and ignores all the elements. When waste management is carried with sustainable method, benefits can be gained in terms of both cost and environment. For this reason, some problems should be solved in order to make waste management by the private sector and municipalities in our country. We can say that some of the main benefits private partners can bring the waste management sector. If you follow the other things, construction of projects on time and budget, of course, overall more efficient and effective management of entire project. And especially in waste management, very important thing is life cycle optimization. Means relationship between how something is designed and built today and how much it costs to operate and maintain over its working life. As you know, cheap construction may mean heavy maintenance costs and disrupted operation in later years, and also some environmental programs. And too expensive construction can be wasted, as it may be higher than what's actually required to do the job. Private companies are good at getting this balance right. We say that life cycle optimization. Of course, while investors are trying to fill the serious investment gap in the waste management sector, they also have some concerns. The most important problem is that municipalities, local government, see waste as a source of income rather than giving money to manage it. As in Europe, although payment of a gate fee for waste management, taking it from citizens, some money for yearly or monthly, supported by regulation in Turkey, but many municipalities do not prefer this because of the political concerns. Another one is the incentive to energy sales. The fact that the current waste-to-energy production incentive mechanism will be finished in mid-2021, and that new incentive fees have not been announced by the ministry, and it's a big problem for the investors. They are not see the future, 10 years, 5 years, cannot see the future, so not want to invest anything. Another issue that need prices will be in Turkish liras instead of US dollar. So this is also cause some difficulties for long-term investments and obtaining the loans. We can say last one for the problems, the municipalities leave the entire project risk to private sector. But risk, if we transfer this partners, of course, this increasing the cost of the project. If the public partner allocates the risk to private partner, the private partner will need more payment to cover this extra risk. So risk transfer only works when the performance incentive, it creates work more than extra cost charged for risk. If we talk about the possible solutions, we mentioned some problems and current situation in Turkey. Of course, there is some solution for them in this sector. Of course, a good preparation process will make liabilities of the project predictable, minimize the possibility of additional costs in the future, ensure that the tender and the contract process are set up correctly, and will ensure the correct risk sharing with the correct exposure of the risk. An effective monitoring, evaluation, and performance audit will provide an important input for the improvement of the PPP method as well as the success of project. Policies regarding PPPs under the medium-term program 2019 to 2021 by Presidency of Turkey as follows. Monitoring and evaluation system will be strengthened in order to establish a stronger relationship between PPP projects and the budget. And also, a capacity building project covering public institutions operating in the field of PPP will be completed in 2 years. And other one is framework legislation regarding PPP practice will be prepared. And regional incentives like land using, insurance subsidy, and custom duties may be reorganized based on the needs. As a result, constructing new areas and possible models existing PPP, it's necessity to handle legislation in a new framework, and that will allow the implementation of different models, of course, in waste management, I am speaking, and different sectors, and ensure integrity in PPP practice. I would like to thank you for your attention and listening to. If you have any question, I can glad to answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much once more. Apologies, my screen simply only takes 5. I don't know how is this possible. So I was not able to log on earlier. Just thank you, Fatih Bey, for starting, and once more welcome. And sorry for this technical delay. Actually, I know Fatih Bey has to leave in some minutes. Actually, in 20 minutes, I think you mentioned. What I wanted to do is, if you give me 1 minute, at least I want to introduce you all to yourselves, and then we can straight away continue. Fatih Bey told me, equipped with a master degree in environmental engineering, 15 years experience in waste management projects. Fatih Bey is the Deputy General Manager at the Istanbul Environmental Management Company. You're welcome. Barış Bey originally comes from an engineering background, yet you told me you spent the past 12 years in banking, notably HSBC and DenizBank, currently with Yapı Merkezi, in charge of investment and project finance, highly experienced in world of PPP, both from the lenders and investors perspective. And if I may, Yalcin Bey manages PPP investments at Gamma Holding, and since 2015. You're sitting on both the Izmir and the Kocaeli PPP hospital boards. We talk here of $1.5 billion of investments you mentioned to me. Definitely an expert in infrastructure assets, previously with Koch Invest, Yapı Kredi, and UniCredit. Now, at least you have your proper introduction and welcome to the panel, and I'm going to buy a new telephone next week. Now, Fatih Bey, thank you very much. I thought, continuing with Barış Bey, if you are so kind, you mentioned the wider picture and what happens if a PPP is terminated? What about equity compensation mechanisms and many other points? The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Klaus. So, can everyone hear me, by the way? Okay. Thank you very much again. So, first of all, thank you for this valuable. I would like to thank you for this valuable opportunity, and I am honored to address such a distinguished audience. So, first, we can start as infrastructure PPP projects in Turkey have become attractive during the recent decade, and there are many projects ongoing successfully, which are either under construction or already at the operation stage. But when compared to the early years of the decade, when there was a boom, so we can observe that the progress on the new PPPs have been slightly impeded. So that's why we should contemplate on how the progress could be stimulated again, and the continuity of these PPP projects could be maintained in mid and long term. So, of course, there might be many recommendations on that, but I would like to scrutinize, as Klaus said, the issue about the equity compensation at first. So, up to now, there are several actions taken by the government for enhancing the feasibility and also the bankability of these infrastructure PPP projects, where some major examples are, first of all, the PPP projects are governed under private law instead of administrative law, bringing a lot of comfort to the lenders and also investors. And secondly, the availability of international arbitration for the dispute resolution is vital for all the parties. And third, the commitment of the demand guarantee by the authority in hard currency is very important as well. So these are the three main strengths observed in PPP projects in Turkey up to now. Now, as a second step, we should discuss on whether the lenders or investors are the party mainly benefiting from these improvements. So I admit at first glance, such a question might be perceived as an unusual question, because you can simply argue that in a PPP project, investors and lenders are deemed to be on the same boat, where they have common interests, reconciling benefits, and the viability of the project is the priority for both parties, because as long as the project lives, the project company is able to generate revenue and fulfill its debt service obligations thereof thanks to these proceeds. And at the end of the day, both lenders and investors are satisfied and happy. So, but the critical issue is what happens if the project agreement is terminated and lenders and investors broke up. So, in other words, their interests are a little bit diverged. So, if we start with the lender side at first, so we can see that there is a strong debt assumption mechanism committed directly by the Treasury, where the majority of the receivables of the lenders are assumed by the Treasury. So these include the principal of debt, the interest, the financing costs and commissions, the hedging costs, which include further the IRS costs, and also the cross-currency swap in some projects under certain thresholds and caps. So these are all assumed by the Treasury in favor of the lenders. And furthermore, these assumptions are explicitly and properly arranged under a separate debt assumption agreement, which is entered further to the implementation contract. So, I mean, with the implementation contract, the main project agreement. So, and another issue is that, further to that, the unassumed portions of these receivables of the lenders are further guaranteed by the investors. So, in general, based on these points, we may conclude that the lenders are relatively secured here. So, on the other hand, if you look at the investor side, first of all, I would like to underline that in case of of a termination of the project agreement, which is due to the project company default, then there is already a penalty for the investors, which is as you know, the equity spent up to now by the investors is lost. And it's fair, I agree. But what happens if the termination is without the project company default? Now, this is the critical point where the rubber meets the road. So first, before discussing that, we also need to distinguish between the healthcare PPPs and the transportation PPPs, because at healthcare PPPs, the structure for equity compensation is a little bit stronger, as per my opinion. First of all, at healthcare PPPs, the expected return is also compensated according to a reasonable IRR, internal rate of return, further to the principal amount of the equity. And secondly, the counterparty of the termination compensation is the Ministry of Health itself, which can be deemed as equivalent to the Treasury in terms of the budget latitude. And thanks to these two strengths at healthcare PPP side, we observe that many international equity investors have been already participated at these projects. But on the transportation PPPs, unfortunately, it's not like that at all. First of all, only the principal amount of the equity is committed to be refunded on nominal basis, where there is no further compensation on either the cost of equity or the expected return. Of course, by the way, I agree that some additional improvements are targeted by the investors during the negotiations of the direct agreement, but these are simply vague and rely on a broader perspective, so that I can simply claim that these are not satisfactory for foreign financial investors especially. And secondly, the authority is the direct party committing this equity compensation under the project agreement rather than the Treasury itself. So these are the two main weaknesses at transportation PPPs, creating adverse effects for investors. So again, for a wrap up, the first weakness is the expected return is not included in the compensation, and secondly, the Treasury is not a direct party to the termination compensation. So as Turkish contractors, and as Yapı Merkezi, of course, we trust the collaborative approach of our authorities, of our government, and accepted to take this risk up to now. As you see, you can mainly observe Turkish contractors as investors in transportation PPP projects, rather than the foreign equity investors, unlike by the healthcare PPP projects. But the main issue is here to attract the foreign investors also. So I would like to underline that issue, because you know, we are talking about gigantic projects of billions of dollars investments. So if we just consider a project of $1 billion in terms of total project cost, it means that around $300 million of equity is required, around 30% of equity is required to conduct that project, to be injected and committed by the investors. And as the nature of the PPP projects, returns are highly backloaded, where investors can receive dividends only after the long-term debt is totally or majorly repaid, and it will take around 15 years. Now here, we should all admit that contractors are not investment funds or private equities, making equity investments in huge amounts by relying only on extremely backloaded returns. So I admit that they are financially strong, but liquidity is the key word now here, and it's a very significant issue to manage by all of them, and especially during slowdown periods in the global economy like today. So in conclusion, I am in the opinion that enticing the foreign equity investors is very crucial for the continuity of these PPP projects in transportation. And I believe that making these structural improvements on equity compensation might be a very good step to first maintain and then increase the attractiveness of these projects in the future. So thank you for listening.
Yalcin Bey, may I continue with you? You mentioned something very interesting. You said there may be difficulties with the PPP, of course, due to the COVID crisis. Could you elaborate a little bit on that besides of your other points?
Oh, with pleasure, Klaus. Hello to everyone. It's a pleasure attending 11th, I believe 10th or 11th event this year, and I was privileged to attend 10 of them as a panelist or sometimes as a moderator for the last 5 years from representing Gamma Holding, and previously representing Koç Holding, where I used to head their environmental infrastructure company. COVID, of course, it's a game changer, Klaus. And right now we are facing the difficulty of conducting business under a pandemic environment, not only in Turkey, but almost in all continents, including Siberia, where we are building power plants. The problem is the same though, which is you have to work very punctually. You have to run like a Swiss clock, so to say, and you have to meet the deadlines and achieve the milestones on a very punctual way. However, COVID brought along a lot of challenges with regards to that. Simply stated, it's a problem common. It's a systematic problem, so to say, and it's common to all the contractors and administrators out there. And therefore, with the start of the pandemic, the Turkish Association of Contractors issued several precautions and measures which have to be taken into consideration while conducting your EPC works. And I'll just make it very simple. In certain areas of the construction, you have to work with several disciplines, and let's assume inside of a room of a hospital, you have to, once you enclose the building, you have to put electricians, mechanicians to do the inner works, and you have to have, for example, 8 persons working in the same room. But under the pandemic environment, you just cannot do that simply because of health and safety reasons. So, and of course, you have like a small city where you provide accommodation and catering for all these labor force, and that simply is not enough any longer, because if you could, for example, provide housing for 8 persons in a single room, now you can only provide that for 1 person. So obviously, COVID slowed down things, not only with regards to construction works, but also with regards to efficiency of doing business. For a long period of time, paperwork somehow slowed down as well, because people get affected, and they're not always available as they used to. So there's also that perspective where you have somehow lost the personal touch. Video conferencing and etc. works extremely efficiently as we are doing a digital conference right now, but the personal touch and feeling is obviously very important, and at least on a temporary basis, you cannot do that, and that means losing time. And again, going back to the lender requirements, the project finance requirements, you just cannot afford to lose time.
Thank you. Believe me, I'm listening. Just you didn't see me. Fatih Bey, is it correct that you have to leave in a couple of minutes? Would I be able to give the floor straight back to you for your second comment?
Okay, thank you very much. I need to leave in 2 minutes. Actually, I would like to conclude that there's some resource in Turkey, especially in waste management, and some needs from the local municipalities. And we need to collaborate the 2 parts by organizing the 2 parts to make an effective way to solve the problem about the waste management. I think the best way to do this, just PPP contract is the best way to find a solution, because it's 10 years, 30 years period. So I think the best way to do it, just PPP projects. And I want to thank you all you, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatih Bey. You have a nice day. Very interesting. Thank you. Hope to meet again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as we still have some minutes, the question was, of course, I hope that there are maybe some audience questions too. Yalcin Bey and Barish Bey, may I ask two perhaps a little bit journalistic provocative questions? I recently penned an article, the US dollar rate, will it go back to 1.45 as it was exactly 14 years ago? Could that impact PPP and the future and lenders and investors? What about the Forex rate? And the second point I had in mind, what about, because this is an event linking the United Kingdom and the Republic of Turkey, of course, and many other places in the world. What about UK investors' confidence in a post-Brexit world? Will Turkey, perhaps despite the slightly critical comments, continue to be a hotspot for PPP, post-COVID, post-Brexit, and the Forex exchange rate? I hope I'm not changing the subject, but I thought, how can we widen this debate with all your topical insights? I'm really interested to learn about it. Maybe Yalcin Bey, would you like to chip in?
Well, of course. Thank you, Klaus. That's probably the hardest question you could ask anyone with regards to what the FX rate's gonna be. We can only speculate, as you mentioned, but instead of speculating, I would like to touch probably how the recent, I mean, I'm saying recent, but for the last 2 years, there has been a hike in interest, foreign exchange rates. How have they affected the projects, ongoing ones and the pipeline? Obviously, that has been very negative on potential projects from where I see things. We are pursuing projects internationally and doing business internationally. So from one perspective, if the FX rates go up, if you are earning in hard currencies, that's a good thing. But on the other hand, when we go back and look at the PPP pipeline in Turkey and in the region, to tie back to your second question, there's a huge pipeline, no doubt about that. In every conference, just 2 weeks ago, there was Istanbul PPP Week, hosted by Istanbul Center of PPP Excellence, and you know there were participants from all over the world, and obviously there's no doubt there's a huge pipeline. But it takes time for them to come to the market. In the case of Turkey, from where I see things, right now the FX rates imposes a big problem, whereas there are other drawbacks in other markets. So most of the PPPs, as you know, are compensated based on a basket formulation, which takes into account the foreign exchange rates as well. In some cases, but although it sounds as a good mitigative factor for project financiers and etc., at the end of the day, we are still not happy that when the rates go up too much. It affects the ongoing pipeline. So while you're able to continue with your own construction works and etc., or if your projects are operational, you may feel that you are receiving a higher compensation, but with regards to what can be achieved going forward, it has a negative impact. Simply because these projects are guaranteed this way or another with either traffic or guarantees or occupancy ratios and etc. But all of them are paid in hard currencies indirectly, at least. Now, that ties back to the purchasing power of the population. You know, PPPs are, in Turkey, mostly serve the retail market or the end user. Fatih Bey, who just provided a lot of information about environmental infrastructure, is in a different position, for example, because it's a wholesale market, if we could call it like that. Whereas, you're running a huge facility and providing the infrastructure for a municipality. But in hospitals, in transportation, and etc., you are serving the end client and end user, and purchasing power is important. Well, you would say that the revenues are guaranteed this way or another, but then you fall below occupancy guarantees or traffic guarantees. And then you may also argue that it's a natural part of PPPs. Of course, you are putting in place a 30-year infrastructure to match the demand going 30 years into the future. Of course, you cannot suppose that capacity to be utilized in the first couple of years. But still, there is a lot of popular criticism in the market, and there's not, in my opinion, an efficient communication, PR, to acknowledge the population about the mechanics of PPPs, why guarantees have to be utilized in the initial years, and in the absence of that, you draw a lot of criticism. Now, in my opinion, this is going to be my last remark. In my opinion, it's equally important that, probably as important as financing, that you gain support from the general population for the projects. And that requires a good communication about its pros and cons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yalcin Bey. I think what you mentioned, that there's many topics, of course, but this looking forward up to 30 years, and that PPP usually are nothing for the short term, but long-term projects, and the population needs to be somehow convinced, involved, and the communication strategy we put in place. Very interesting from a media perspective, of course. Now, if I may, Barış Bey, your turn. What are your reflections, please?
Okay, thank you. So, first of all, Yalcin Bey already underlined some critical issues on that. So, of course, the main issue is that the commitments of the authority and the government under these PPP projects are mainly under hard currency, as you already said. And this is important, and it's also inevitable because, the business plans of all these PPP projects are structured in hard currency. What's the reason for that? It's clear that, unfortunately, under the very high interest rate in Turkish lira, it's not realistic and feasible to structure these PPP projects in local currency. And unfortunately, we couldn't decrease the interest rate of local currency further because, if we decrease the local currency, then otherwise the FX rate will jump. And this is a macroeconomic and structural issue. And of course, this is out of our scope, so I won't dive deep into that. But since as the FX rates are increasing, as said, the commitments of the government are increasing as well, and also in the public, these projects will become criticized more. As we all see in the media, people just convert the total commitments of the government to Turkish lira and say, okay, this year the government should pay to the investors billions of Turkish lira, and it's not realistic, and all the investors are guilty and they are enjoying the rapid increase in the FX rate. They are culminating their profits, and all the public is suffering due to that. So as we all see, people are discussing in the media on these issues, but the story is a little bit different here. I would like to say that because, first of all, I would like to underline here that a tariff for these PPP projects for a calculation year is pegged in local currency at the beginning of the year, where the receivables of the project company is in local currency. But on the other hand, the debt service is denominated in FX currency, as I mentioned, because the whole business plan is structured under FX. So considering the revenue and the debt service in a calculation period. So we can still see that there is still a currency mismatch among the cash inflow and cash outflow of the project company. Hence, forward hedging contracts become inevitable to mitigate that risk. But here, a higher volatility in Turkish lira means more expensive forward hedging contracts for PPP investors. And therefore, as we can all see, that depreciation of local currency is not for the benefit of the investors as well. And it's another factor. It's also a factor further to the increase in the commitments of the government. It's also another factor diminishing the profitability and the feasibility of the projects from the investors' perspective. And moreover, I also would like to emphasize another issue, and the timing parameter. It's the timing parameter. So since the timing of the revenue generation and the debt service obligations are different, then the project company should make a precise forecast at the beginning of the period for their operational performance and fix consecutive FX hedging transactions thereof. And here, all the discrepancies in actual figures afterwards from the initial forecast for the respective period means a further cost for the project company, exacerbating its financial position further. So, in conclusion, yes, I agree with you that an uncontrolled increase and an uncontrolled depreciation of local currency will jeopardize the future of the PPP projects in Turkey. And also we can discuss about what kind of improvements we can talk about for that. Of course, minimizing the volatility of the local currency and the avoidance of the further depreciation is a macroeconomic issue. This is out of our scope, but I have two structural recommendations here, on the other hand, to diminish the adverse effects of the, at least short-term currency risk, as I mentioned, for a particular calculation period. So the first one, the frequency of the top-up payments related to the performance guarantee granted by the government, and secondly, the debt service obligations by the project company should coincide with each other in terms of timing. So I believe these are the two improvements which are crucial for minimizing the FX costs of project companies and increase the economic and financial value of the projects thereof.
Thank you very much, Barış Bey, Yalçın Bey. Now, don't worry, I'm not taking notes. This is all Chatham House, but I just take notes for myself sometimes to better understand your fantastic points. This is I'm learning a lot. I'm pretty much sure our audience is constantly learning a lot, although you are all experts. Now, what struck me most is I think you mentioned the communication strategy, PPPR, in the long run. Of course, there is volatility and Forex and exchange rates, but I think I take a positive note from what you both and Fatih said as well. There are obstacles, there are barriers. We live in complicated times, but there are many PPP projects still and for sure in the pipeline for the future. So it hasn't dried up to stay in that pipeline picture. And if you allow me to retrospectively thank Fatih Bey, thank Barış Bey and Yalçın Bey for their fantastic insights and contribution. It has been an absolute pleasure. And if Emine Hanım agrees, shall we close this panel?
Yes, I agree.
Okay,
thank you so much. Thank you
very much.
everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much. Thank you.